Americium, Americium.
Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast.
Americum!
Indeed, on Saturday the 15th of June. I think it's June. I can't tell by the weather. Oh, it's gone blue outside, so I guess that's Juney.
Talking about the weather again at the start of the podcast.
Indeed. Yes, I'm joined by Robert Kemp.
Yo!
And Zachary Burgess.
You didn't say your own name.
And I'm... My name is Dan Train.
The mystery man.
I'm the host of this podcast.
The man of mystery.
Indeed. There you
the
go.
hostess with the unknowest.
Hostess.
The hostess with the mostest. That's how you normally say it, isn't it? Or the host.
No, because you were meant to say hostess, which is why it's meant to rhyme.
But I'm the hostess.
You're the most hosting.
I'm the hostess here.
I thought that was what they said when they referred to men, like the hostess with the mostest. Like, I know it doesn't make any sense, but...
The host with the most.
I know, but that's not... I just thought that's what you say, like, to be dumb on a... describing your host.
You didn't get your coffee out of the way.
No, I thought I had.
You had to wait until the podcast already started.
There was one more in there.
Oh, dear.
At least.
Okay.
Right, so we need to define what's going to happen.
Yes, this is our E3 special.
One of them, maybe.
Yes.
Because there might be more than one part of this.
With the exception of Game of the Year, it's the most exciting part of the Game of the Year.
Yeah, we're doing well for Game of the Year contenders, though, aren't we? What have we got so far? Devil May Cry, Bioshock Infinite. What else was there?
Well, presumably when we get round to it, The Last of Us, given the response that it's been having.
Grand Theft Auto.
Potentially.
Yeah, so...
Starbound, lol.
Starbound.
That everything comes out.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, The Last of Us. So you're going to buy that? You're going to play that?
Well, yeah, I've been...
I want to play that.
I will get round to it eventually. I'm not sure... I don't know. My current approach on games is I don't really feel the need to get them as soon as they come out quite so much.
Your current
anymore.
approach of games is play ones that are hella old because you've still got to get through them.
Yeah, true.
Backlog.
Yeah.
This is just it. Yeah, at the moment my backlog is so large that it's just I'm a little reluctant to pick up new stuff. But
there hasn't
it's
been
as good as
you care about anyway. So
yeah, that's true. As good as The Last of Us looks, and I do care about that because Naughty Dog and the last 3 Uncharted games were friggin' amazing. And this was, by all accounts, even more friggin' amazing, but addressing some of Naughty Dog's, cliches. Then
It seems like almost there was nothing at E3 that has the potential to be as good as The Last of Us demonstrably already is, and you can buy it today.
we'll get to all that, but I kind of agree.
Yeah, it's buy and play the games that are already out. They're freaking awesome.
So speaking of playing games that are already out,
yes,
moving this shit along.
Yeah, we're gonna go straight to what you've been playing so that we can fit in all the E3 stuff. So let's go.
Because basically news doesn't exist apart from E3. That is the whole news section.
So we'll get to.
So here's we're just gonna make you wait.
Yeah, get the dumb shit we've been playing out of the way.
Oh, but then they won't get the people. They're looking forward to someone saying news, but they won't get it. We'll have to say E3 or something.
I'm sure we could just say news quite a lot.
Okay. I'm sure Rob can.
Just every news section, every press conference.
News.
Just start with news. Okay, so what have you been playing, Zach?
Game.
Yeah. I've been playing... Well, first of all, let's go through the whole rigmarole of fixing my goddamn computer, because after my graphics card was... It was really dumb, because I said last time it started crashing.
Yeah.
And then I turned on my second monitor so I could have, my desktop widgets visible, so I could see if it was overheating or whatever. And that kind of solved the problem for a week. It didn't crash at all for an entire week while I had my second monitor on, and I was like, well, this is dumb. It's that can't be the problem. That can't be a solution. No. There's no reason that turning on the second monitor would fix it. But then eventually, it's so it worked fine for that week, okay. and then it started crashing not even in games, just in Windows.
Generally.
Steam's main front page crashed it, and I was like, oh well, I guess that means it's definitely time to get rid of this then. So I got rid of that. I borrowed Rob's old card temporarily. Very temporarily, because it turned out I was just fuck it, I'll just order it. I'll just buy a fucking new one, get it in there.
How much did that cost?
It's 300 and something.
Jesus.
Yeah, you went for the... Did you go for the exact same one as me?
No, I went EVGA instead of...
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
Jesus. For no particular reason.
Yeah, the Edgars, or however you want to say it, they're a tiny bit cheaper, but the Asus OC
and they come with
a little bit more powerful.
They come with such dumb shit like case stickers and
yeah,
really?
They always come with crap.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get
a poster.
What free games do you get from ages ago?
I don't ages ago.
Well, usually they give you games that are a bit out of date.
I think the deal for like all Nvidia cards at the moment is like Metro, but I'm not sure whether it applies to this one.
It's not all cards. It didn't apply to my one.
I'm not sure it applied to this one either.
Because when I
wasn't really paying attention.
The Nvidia deal at the time with my card was, or Nvidia cards in general was, you could buy one and you'll get like content for a ton of free-to-play games.
Right.
So like you get some stuff in PlanetSide and some stuff in World of Tanks. And
That's
it's like,
cool.
well, none of it really sounded that interesting.
No.
So it's like, well, I don't care about that. And then for a brief time, they did an Assassin's Creed 3 voucher, which was slightly more appealing. Because I reckon that game must actually look pretty good on PC.
I expect so.
But that wasn't on the card that I wanted. And I'm like, well, I might get it eventually on some kind of Steam sale. Woo. So.
And the other thing that was done about this card is I thought this was kind of weird in terms of like a sort of static issue where, because it has the really fancy like, plastic encasement around the card, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was like it had the peel-off plastic to protect the shininess on the card. And I was like, that seems a bit...
Yeah, mine had that as well.
That does seem a bit dumb, considering you're just going to show it in your PC and never see it again.
But it seems somewhat dangerous to leave it there as well, because it'll just melt or block the fans.
And when you're peeling it off, it sounds like it would be causing static, although I'm sure it isn't. But it's like that weird peeling sound.
Yeah. Everyone loves that feeling of peeling that shit off. Though.
But then it was like, so the whole card was wrapped in like one layer of it that wasn't, it was just like loosely attached. So it's just like, get rid of that. And then all the individual parts that were shiny had one. Even the incredibly tiny, like less than an inch surface area, a little bit on the side that was shiny. It was like, peel that tiny bit off. I nearly didn't spot it. So yeah, shove that in there. Luckily it fits. It turns out my
they're long old cards, aren't they?
Yeah, it turns out my case actually has enough space in front of where the graphics card goes. And actually, I think I don't know if the EVGA one is different, but it's not actually really any longer than the card I had in there to start with.
Okay,
it's about the same.
Yeah,
I think they've hit their limits. Basically,
well, the 670 is a little bit longer than my 275 GTS. But I think it might be as long as the old 275 GTX, which is about as long as I think they've ever been.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember originally making the decision not to go for the GTX and get a GTS before because I thought it was going to bump up against my hard drives, but there was more space than I expected. But
it very nearly interferes with the PCI slot below it. It's like so close to the plastic mount on the motherboard.
Yeah. It's because you need to be able to fit two next to each other, so they have to be designed to be. Yeah. Although then, how do you draw that? How does the air get drawn when you do that ridiculous?
That's what I always think about. It's like surely that just blocks half the fans.
Yeah, the bottom card is in trouble.
And it's like, this card could be a 4 SLI if you have a ludicrous amount of cash.
A 4 SLI, too. You need a crazy motherboard to support that as well.
I think my motherboard goes up quite high. I think I bought mine specifically for the layout of the slots, pretty much. Because I knew I wanted to fit a PCI Express sound card in a specific place. So I was like, I looked at all the motherboards just to see that if I ever did want to go, not SLI, but the equivalent for Radeon, whatever that's Crossfire, Infinity bullshit, that I would have the space.
Well, Infinity is just for the surround
monitors,
isn't it? But,
that's super cool, that stuff.
And then with the power plugs, it took the same number of power plugs, which is convenient because they don't have to fuck around with like finding more cable or whatever.
No, they all need 2 nowadays, don't they?
Yeah.
Although they did show the diagram of like theoretical ones where it's like you can have
there's some weird
2 8-pins or 1 8-pin and 2 6-pins. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there's weird new fittings now which are becoming a bit of a pain, I suppose, if you want to upgrade and like your card requires additional pins. But I don't think many of those are about. But presumably they might be if you get a 700 series or a Titan or something like that.
But it was slightly annoying where, like, for some reason, because my previous card it just had the 2 power plugs. This one, for no apparent reason, they're above each other, and the bottom one is upside down. So I had to annoyingly twist the cable, which had been fixed in such a position for so long, it had moulded into that shape, and it was like, now I have to twist this goddamn thing.
Oh, that's awkward.
My power supply came with so many attachment modules, because it's 850 watts, so it's like ridiculous.
Although my one isn't modular, so it was just... Luckily, all the cables are nicely cable tied, so I didn't have to interfere with that nice layout that they left me with when they built the machine.
Yeah, mine's not so great. Mine's like the like skanky old not modular, everything fixed, not that well isolated style cables.
Yeah.
So there's just cables everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I shoved it in, and then I had the fun time of more problems.
Oh no! What?
Well, it was really dumb because I put it in.
Yeah.
And I first ran Borderlands 2, and that worked. Well, first of all, Borderlands 2 crashed on launch, but it was just like a regular crash, and I was like, well, this obviously isn't related to the graphics card. Verify the Steam cache, and then it worked.
Yeah, it might have been like just I don't know. Some games sometimes have problems when you swap cards because they don't automatically figure out. Oh wait, this is a different card.
But yeah, I verified the Steam cache and then it worked, and it was like, well, that's fine. And then Borderlands 2 seemed to work okay. But then when I came to run Eve and Guild Wars, you launch them, and the internet immediately disconnects.
Oh, brilliant!
And I was like, well, what the fuck?
Were you literally drawing too much power or something?
Well, I was
like bits of your motherboard.
It can't. Yeah, it's like it can't possibly be a power thing. And my fucking power supply is 850 watts from the start.
It's gigantic.
And the card doesn't use any more plugs, so it's not drawing any more from that, surely. So then I was like, well, what the fuck could this possibly be? And then I was like, well, so I searched to try and see what people were saying. It was like, well, the only thing that makes even the remotest bit of sense, but still doesn't make any sense, is RQ conflict. And it's like, it can't fucking be an RQ conflict.
Where's that been a problem?
That's like the oldest problem in the history of the entire universe.
What, a hardware conflict?
But so it's like, in theory, well, as quite a few of the forum threads on this topic were saying, it's like, in theory, in Windows 7, you shouldn't actually be able to get IRQ conflicts because Windows actually manages it itself.
Yeah.
So I went and looked, and it's like, it's not detecting a conflict, but the graphics card and the network card are actually on the same IRQ.
Oh shit! So it did actually.
Well, no,
conflict, but
because there wasn't a conflict. It's because of the way Windows can manage it now, it can have more than one thing on the same IRQ. I assume it's because it's the PCIe slot and the PCI slot directly below it are on the same IRQ.
So yeah, it knows how to identify the two signals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I suppose they must have reached a point at some
where they
ran out of IRQ channels.
Because there's only like 16 of them by default, which is like nothing. And at least 6 of those are reserved for system stuff. So I was like, I don't have any other ideas. So I ended up swapping my network card and my sound card in the 2 PCI slots.
Wait, so your network card is a network card, it's not on your motherboard?
Yeah.
So it can have wireless.
It's wireless.
Right.
Oh, right, sorry.
So I swapped the sound card and the network card, and I was like, well, now if I launch like even Guild Wars and then my sound starts fucking up, I'll know it's a conflict on that port. And of course it didn't, and it just disconnected the internet again, and I was like, well, what the fuck?
It wasn't that.
That's pretty weird.
But then, of course, what does it turn out to be? Electronic interference! Apparently this new graphics card puts up so much data down the cable that having the antenna next to the cable makes it kill the internet.
Oh, wow.
It didn't do it on my last graphics card. In fact, on my last graphics card, the antenna was literally wedged between 2 monitor cables and it didn't get affected.
Right.
That's crazy.
But now on this new one, you can't have the antenna next to the cable because it just kills it.
Is it a new cable or are you using your old cable?
No, it's the same monitor because it's attached to the monitor rather than...
No, I didn't know if the cables you're using to feed the monitor were they new or did they just using the same ones you had before?
Yeah, it's the same.
Well, I get it must be sending a stronger signal then.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like have you got
a DVI cable that's like hardwired into the back of your monitor?
Yeah, it's part of the monitor.
That's weird.
That is strange.
That's very.
It's quite an old monitor at this point, really.
You still using the Epson?
No, the Xerox.
Xerox, sorry, yeah, not Epson. I knew it was a printer manufacturer for some reason.
I was also trying to work out who was the company who bought that design?
Philips.
Oh, it was Philips.
Because I've got one.
Yeah, because I was like...
Not here, but upstairs I've got an old Philips one that's the widescreen version of yours.
Yeah, because I was like... Well, I started looking at monitors and I was like, maybe I should just buy a monitor at the same time as I'm buying this card upgrade, but I just thought, fuck it. But the other trouble is now I'm down to 1 monitor again, because the other monitor I have is super old and it's only VGA, and this card doesn't support that any longer.
No, of course not.
Well, you can. You need one of those DVI.
No,
VGA.
it doesn't support the connector because it's...
Oh, not at all?
No, it only
you can't
does...
even use the adapter.
No, it only does straight DVI and DVI-D. And the monitor I have, my main monitor is DVI, so it won't go in the DVI-D slot, so I can't use the...
I thought if you had
VGA to DVI to go into what would normally be the DVI slot.
Yeah, I thought if you had like a regular DVI port that they essentially output both a DVI and a VGA signal
a regular
at the same
one
time.
does, but but then I need 2 to do that, and the other one's DVI-D.
Is that the dual link thing?
Yeah, so you can't. The regular DVI cables won't go into that.
Yeah. So I needed DVI-D for 3D because you need DVI-D to run 120 hertz.
Because you got double the.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got through all that situation, and then my computer is working again. It hasn't crashed yet, so presumably that was the problem. We have to hope.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yep.
Mysterious.
It is almost always like a blue screen issue on most gaming setup PCs is a graphics card problem.
Yeah.
It's pretty much guaranteed. I suppose it could be like, really, really bad hardware failures. I mean, hard disk failures. So
yeah.
Could go that route as well. But
so after all that, I didn't really play much on the PC, I guess.
Have you got any games that now suddenly look better?
Not really.
No.
I mean, that old card
Battlefield
could handle quite a lot. Well, I haven't run Battlefield yet.
That's the
But I used to have Battlefield turn up quite a lot.
But your Team Fortress, oh no, you upgraded after that, because you used to play Team Fortress at quite a low frame rate to my eyes.
That was my old
like,
computer.
Yeah, sorry, I remember now. It's like, that must run like stink anyway on your last build.
Yep, pretty much. So yeah, I did play much on the PC, and then just like yesterday, because it came out on Friday, I got my stupid code for the free copy of Animal Crossing and started that up.
Woo!
And started running around and catching a shit ton of bugs because it's the bug catching competition.
So what are your initial thoughts? Is that the first thing you get to do, the bug catching?
Yeah, it was like, it's one of the events, I think it happens. I sort of glanced at a calendar thing that tells you when all the special events were, but I wasn't really paying that much attention. But I think the bug catching thing happens like once a month during summer.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was like a fixed event to sort of ease you into the event system. Like...
It was just a coincidence that it happened to be today. And I was like, oh, well, okay then. I better fucking catch those bugs. And then in about a quarter of an hour, I'll have to turn it on and find out whether I won.
Live results.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Animal Crossing. Real time weapon change.
Real time weapon change.
Not actually though. You actually have to go into a menu and then
it's not real time.
Oh, that's not real.
It's not real time at all.
Pause menu weapon switching.
Yep.
Innovative features.
It's actually really annoying because you have, particularly if you want to unequip, because you actually have to go. Because, like, if you want to shake a tree, you have to be not holding all the things. You have to go into your menu and then it's like, unequip the thing that I'm holding so I can shake a tree. And then maybe if you shake a tree, a bug falls out. And then you have to go back into the menu and go, now equip the bug there. And then
So the specific feature that you actually want is real-time weapons?
Yeah, basically.
And they haven't got it? Awesome.
I could see that being relatively irritating.
Unless it's just something I haven't found out yet, of course.
Or, like,
I have pushed all the buttons.
Some shortcut.
Yeah.
Because presumably, see, that sounds like one of the things that would be the best match to the D-pad if you're using the analog stick to move around.
Yeah.
You know,
something like that.
A bit like the old Zelda C button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Quick
C
switch.
button. Yeah, that'd be good.
Maybe it has it. I don't know yet. I've just been running around catching fucking bugs. I haven't discovered most of the shit about this game yet.
Cool. Okay. You're just getting into it then.
Yeah.
We'll have a more thorough report next time.
I guess so.
How much debt are you in?
What?
Are you in any debt yet?
Well, I paid off the first house loan immediately. Mainly because I was catching all those bugs, and all the bugs you don't catch, you just self-catch. I was like, well, there you go. Pays off that. But I expect the second stage. I assume that there's going to be even more crippling debt once the house gets built, which will be tomorrow.
That's one of the main hooks.
Yeah, so exactly. That's the whole point of Animal Crossing, crippling debt.
It's a life lesson.
I don't know if you have to pay interest. That would really suck.
Especially if you forgot to play the game for a while. You'd be like, oh shit.
I bet that's how it, like, oh, you seem to have paid this off. Right, so now let's deal with your interest. Ah!
Tom Nook, he knows what he's doing.
I can't remember what else I even did play. I guess I casually played more of Mystery Dungeon and a tiny bit more Fire Emblem as well, just grinding missions in both of those. I did actually do one more of the story missions of Fire Emblem because I'd finally ground everyone up enough to be like, okay, now you're not just instantly going to die.
I like that. Is
that
yeah,
it's a great side of phrase.
You can't say grinded.
No, but I can grind someone up. It kind of means like making them into tiny little particles rather than
and breaking them down stronger. Instead of leveling them up. Yeah,
and making them stronger.
So yeah, I did that.
Right,
Rob. You done?
Yeah. What have you been playing, Rob?
I finished Catherine.
Woo.
And I like that game. I have to say, it's like I was a little dubious at first, but you there's a moment like I don't know. It's like I suppose where you have a lot of games, but it seemed more clear cut in this, where you had a sort of like the difficulty of the game seemed to suddenly get easier for me.
Ah.
Did you just learn something, or did it actually just level out?
I'm not sure. You see, part of me thinks, I just had some kind of internal epiphany and suddenly just figured out how to get out of most situations. Because, I don't know, I think it was like just over halfway through the game that I found things, I could just blitz through stages a lot easier. Bosses weren't quite so irritating, and some of the puzzle design wasn't quite so tricky to overcome. I don't know if that's me figuring out the mechanics or if the difficulty curve is just a bit fucked up. That wasn't so clear. And it was still a little frustrating because some of the stuff I said about the other half of the game, the story elements and the gameplay, it's never quite clear exactly what you're affecting and what you're not affecting, which would be cool, except for the fact that I'm pretty sure you have no effect on the story until right at the end.
Right, yeah.
It's like a classic, because during the game you're making decisions, but they're just affecting this little blue-red bar thing, and I think there's like 5 questions. All right, and these might be slightly spoiler terms about how the game actually functions. So and that's some of the charm of the game the first time through, I think, is trying to figure out what everything does.
Yeah. And
the game has a tendency of explaining what features are later than they actually become useful. So, like, you'll get told in a text message, like, "Hey, have you noticed this thing?" It's like, "Yeah, I had noticed that." Like, it tells you about the bar and just describes it as the mysterious bar. It's like, "Have you noticed this thing when you make certain decisions?" "Oh, I wonder what it means." "Oh, great, cheers." Then it does things like that quite a lot. But yeah, basically, that bar affects the ending, and there's a series of questions during the last stage that also affect the ending.
Right.
You can't, as far as I can tell, apart from some of the bar patrons, which you can save by being nice to them, there's no story element you can alter up till the very end. And I was a little bit surprised, but apparently, and I had to look this up on the wiki, just like how the endings play out, because it's like I doubt I'm going to play through it again, but just how what the other endings are. Apparently, there's 8 of them, and I got what is known as the Catherine with a K true ending, which means I played like a good boy.
Okay.
Which is somewhat relieving, given that Naomi was sort of watching me some of the time I was playing this game and making the moral decisions. So it's like, okay, cool, this seems to have worked out. I may have scored some brownie points here. Fantastic. But there are some of the... I mean, Zach obviously knows where the story goes because he hinted at it last time. But some of the Catherine with a C endings sound freaking bonkers. And so there's, on top of that, there's 3 endings for whichever lady you choose: true, good, and bad. And there's also a couple of endings for freedom, as in if you basically end up being in the neutral ground, rather than siding either way, which are just really insane. It's always kind of. I think most players are either going to side one way or the other.
Yeah,
that's typical gamer mentality, isn't it? You always gun for one of them.
Yeah.
It's like Mass Effect. You never gun to be like the middle guy. You're always Paragon or Renegade.
Well, it's because, especially in Mass Effect, it was like, and the earlier Mass Effects, it was worse, where it literally locks you out of options if you don't go one way or the other, basically.
Yeah, you can't be neutral without being less powerful, sort of.
I think throughout the puzzling action, I think there are a couple of mechanics that come across as a little unfair. Some of the bosses fire attacks that at moments during the puzzle, depending on where you happen to be, sometimes they're pretty much unavoidable and you will die. And you have to go back to either the start level or the last checkpoint. And it's like, that can be highly frustrating. And there are certain blocks as well that get introduced that are just the most frustrating things in the world. Like some blocks towards the end are called monster blocks and can move by themselves, which will occasionally really screw up your strategy to try and escape the section. I mean, they're not that bad because they don't move that often, but every now and then they will move in such a way that it's like, well, I can't do anything anymore. Damn. Cheers for that. Which is highly frustrating. And trap blocks, for me, are the worst because they serve no point but to be frustrating. A trap block is as soon as you stand on it, a series of spikes comes off. but there's like a split-second window that if you just walk across it in one go, the spikes will fire just after you step off. So you can fire them and make them safe. But sometimes they're a little bit hard to spot. Sometimes they're... Sometimes some of the block types aren't that distinct from each other, so they can be a little difficult to see. And just when you're trying to solve it, you'll accidentally step on a trap block and you're dead. And it's like they serve no purpose but to frustrate, rather than being part of the clever puzzle elements. And it's that bit sucks. But yeah, I kind of warmed to it, I have to say. Some of the controls I still think are a bit funky. Like, if you're trying to hang off blocks and you end up hanging around the back of blocks, the controls seem to sort of reverse at random. It's like, it's a bit...
The classic.
It's a classic leap into space Ezio type.
A little bit, yeah. Which, like, it does say at one point, it's like, oh, be careful when you're around the back, the controls reverse. And it's like... And I'm just sort of thinking to myself, well, why do they reverse? Like, I want to do the problem I had, I think, in the first place was, so if I push in a certain direction relative to what I can see, I want to move in that direction, but I don't know why the controls feel like they have to reverse around the back, because basically it just means that in certain circles you just end up jiggling back and forth on a block, and I find it hard to sometimes wrap my head around, right, actually I need to be doing the exact opposite of what I'm doing to try and get around this section. I don't know, it seems needlessly complicated.
Yeah. But
the way around it, I suppose, is if you want to just do a large stretch of movement, is if you just hold down the button, he'll keep going in that direction. So, yeah, not so keen on that mechanic, but... yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I discovered the other day that perhaps I should have been playing it with Japanese voiceover, though.
Because it's better.
Well, naturally, it's a Japanese game, so some of the... It might have made some of the cutscenes like slightly more bearable, because the voice acting's okay, but it's a little... I don't know. It's a little... Japanese stuff always sounds slightly bonkers in English, doesn't it? Like, the emotional response doesn't ever seem quite right, or a little... stilted, I guess. Stinted.
It's like it doesn't match the facial animations as good in English, because when it's in Japanese you don't know what that's actually meant to look like, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's like it's not quite right. But I did find out that Vincent not only looks like Spike from Cowboy Bebop, but in the Japanese version is voiced by the same guy.
That makes sense.
Which would have been awesome, so I probably should have done that. Yeah, so that's Catherine. It's I don't think I'm going to go back to it, but I only got like a third of the trophies on it, and some of them, from what I've read, are insane to try and achieve. So it's pretty hardcore if you want it to be. But yeah, it was fun. I think I enjoyed it because it's fresh and because it doesn't fit into the typical Western categories of a video game. I said that before. It's a little bit like, I don't know, Japanese games just don't seem to be so common or so, just well known, I suppose, over here. And so playing through an actual Japanese game that felt a bit Japanesey was kind of nice to go back to. So yeah, that's Catherine. Played quite a lot more Half-Second Hero.
Half-minute
Hero. Yeah, Half-Second Hero.
Half-Second Hero would be a much harder game.
Yeah. Half-Minute Hero. I quite like that. So I finished the main campaign of that. Just basically did it. It's mostly the same all the way through, to be honest. But it's somewhat cool. It perhaps goes on for a little longer than it should, the campaign. And in actual fact, you probably, unless you're going for there is one achievement for, I think, nailing everything, but unless you're really going to go for that, then I wouldn't worry too much about the split routes after all. You get some loot on some of them that you probably wouldn't get on other routes, and some of that loot can be really nice, but my tip would be don't worry too much about the split routes.
Right.
But yeah, I quite enjoyed that, but then it unlocks several bonus modes. Now, here's the weird thing about this. If you're playing in... the game has two graphics modes. So you have classic mode, which is done in 16-bit SNES-style graphics. Or you have the mode I was playing in, which is what they call Neo-Cartoon, which is it's basically sort of cartoony, but with not much animation, a bit retro-y, sort of a weird halfway house. It's let's make the old graphics slightly sharper style thing.
Right.
And but weirdly, the bonus modes, if I was to go into, after you finish the game, the Evil Lord 30 comes up instead of Hero 30. And it's like, play that. And that's actually just one level of gameplay where you play as a different character. And it's like, all right, okay, fine, I'll do that. And then it opens the next one. So if you swap to classic graphics mode, Evil Lord is actually a totally different game.
Okay.
It's like a completely different mode that plays very differently. It's like it becomes a top-down almost. You have to summon enemies and then point them in the general direction of the bad guys you want them to kill. And it's like, it's a very different game. And there's more levels and it's actually quite a lot to it. And it's like, so, but it's just, there's no clue that the two graphics modes means that there's two different games there.
That's weird.
I just sort of, the only clue was when I looked at the Steam achievements, it's like, finish level 5 of Evil Lord. And it's like, wait, what?
There's more than one level?
There's more, how? But, so yeah, it actually describes it as classic Evil Lord. And it's like, right, okay, so maybe if I swap graphics modes, oh wow, this is cool. There's more to it. So there's actually quite a lot to this game, surprisingly.
No, shortly,
probably. When it does go on sale, it's super cheap. So, but even so, it's probably worth its regular price, which I think is only a couple of quid, something like that. It's not pricey at all. So yeah, well worth it. And I started playing Dust, an Elysian Tale.
Yeah.
Another
thing that I might
on Explore. So I've played a few hours of that, and I really like it so far. I mean, really like it. It's pretty goddamn good.
So what is that game again?
It's a 2D brawler, essentially. So you play it a bit like... are you familiar with Odin Sphere or Muramasa? They're Vanillaware games, but they were kind of like 2D brawlers a little bit, where you have a blade. And did you play the Dishwasher? Or do you remember the Dishwasher from Explore?
No, I don't remember that at all.
They're basically like Castle Crashers, only more about combo.
Yeah, it's there's much more of the combat's a little deeper. You can do combos by different button presses, and air juggles and all that stuff is possible. And it's a bit like, imagine a simplified Devil May Cry in 2D, I guess, is where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. But it has the adventure trappings, a bit of a Castlevania, sort of Metroidvania style game. So you have a map, you can go around. There are some elements you can't do until later in the game that you have to come back to. So it has an element of that as well. It's all the graphics are hand drawn, pretty much. There's some exceptions to the rule, but they are very well animated, it has to be said. It is a beautiful looking game. What's made it even more extraordinary by the fact that it was all done by one guy.
Yeah.
It's an incredible achievement. It really is. And we said this before when it was all out, and before I even played the game, it was like, it just looked great. But seeing it in action, like when you're playing it, it's lovely looking. Really great. Even if some of the character design, I think, is possibly a little childish for my tastes, but
everyone complained about it. Really.
Big-eyed bunnies.
It was the one thing everyone complained about, or not really complained. Sort of if this was better, this would be perfect, but it's fine.
I don't have a problem with it. It's different. Let's put it that way. It's kind of, and it doesn't do anything other than try and set itself up as a fairly family-friendly game. And it's not bloody. It's not brutal. There's not sweary. It's actually quite humorous in places, in a really stupid sort of Saturday morning cartoon kind of way.
The story's meant to be fairly dark, though.
Well, I haven't got to any darkness yet, because it all starts with an amnesia plot.
Yeah. So you'll find out something eventually.
So I actually don't know what's going on at all at this point, but the voice acting is surprisingly good as well. It's solid. Your character is kind of a bit moody, sort of deep voice kind of guy saying, "Oh, I don't know what's going on. I seem to have lost my memory." Oh.
Yeah,
and you have a very well spoken sword called Ara.
Naturally, who's got to have talking swords.
He's like, "Your name is Dust." Oh, really?
Oh, really?
I do not know why you have summoned me. I suspect we shall find answers up ahead. That kind of thing. They even explain game systems, just the characters casually talking to each other. It's like, if you as you hit enemies, you may notice that your hit chain increases, and then if you end a battle with a high hit chain, you will gain bonus experience. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense for all these HUD elements we're talking about.
Yeah, they do that a lot. So you have a companion called Fidget, who's supposed to be guardian of the sword, who's this flying thing. She just kind of acts as the, well, at least I think it's she, kind of acts as the the comedy element, and she's actually quite good because she's like reluctant but somewhat nervous about things, and then makes up for it. I don't know. I think the writing is pretty good, and the way and the voices for the characters are so far somewhat perfect. It's
somewhat perfect.
Well, no, I say somewhat perfect because the only exceptions so far have been some of the townspeople I've had to meet.
Right,
they've had like
generic NPCs.
Yeah, dodgy Australian accent man,
okay,
and slight Irish twinge man. Like it doesn't.
Twinge man.
Yeah. Twinge man. But those voices haven't been so great, but they're not bad. That's the thing. No voice, nothing. I don't know. As I say, I really like it so far. I'm going to keep playing it.
Coolio.
And yeah, I'm highly impressed. Should have played it sooner. As always.
Yeah, as always.
Yep.
Because it's annoying because it came out like last year, didn't it? So it's like, I can't put this in any Game of the Year categories unless it's like best game of this year we played last year.
Yeah, that one category
the
that
most
we made
hotly
for that.
contested category.
For that reason.
But yeah, really like it. That pretty much sums me up.
Okay.
Coolio.
I won the bug catching competition, by the way.
Hey, live result.
Got my gold trophy. Yeah, I'm gonna
win. What have I played?
Yeah, what have you played? You played some Kerbal.
I bought Kerbal Space Program
because it got cheap.
Yeah, so
I was like, I saw it and I was like, oh shit, I better tell Dan. And then by the time I remembered to tell you, you'd already bought it, and I was like, well, that's good. He was actually paying attention.
Well, I was paying attention.
List,
I had it on my wish list, but I was paying attention, so I bought it before I received the email saying something on your wish list is on sale. Yeah, because I put a few things on my wish list.
It's quite handy, that.
Yeah, it's also nefarious,
but
it's freaking awesome. Yeah, so yeah, I bought that. So, like I say, I only made a couple of rockets so far, and I haven't figured out the navigation things, but I managed to get into a ridiculously massive orbit.
Yeah, you just went straight up. How fast?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I did tilt it over a bit. I'm not sure about the controls for tilting just yet. I don't think I've got. I've never tried. I haven't tried the reaction control systems yet. So I think
you need one of them.
I just basically completely lose all control once I leave the atmosphere. Basically.
Yeah.
So. Well, I had a thrust vector on my second stage main engine.
Right.
So I had some control.
Yeah, but if you have thrust vectoring, that does a lot for...
Yeah.
Although that's normally more useful for, like, the earlier stages, because keeping a really heavy rocket straight when you're going on the main thrust, that's why you want... There's a lot of thrust vectoring that goes on there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can... that wastes quite a lot of fuel in theory because you're doing a lot of adjustments.
That's true.
So you can lock it if you can lock the gimbals on the thrust vectoring engines if you want. But I always just use that because my main problem with the heavier rockets is I can never work out how to get them to be maneuverable using just the SAS stuff.
Right.
Because I don't think that the SAS actually works the way I think it does.
What does it do? Because, I mean, it stops you going crazy, but you still have some control, right? Do you? Or don't you? Well, or does it just lock you to wherever you're freaking going?
It's like you lock the direction you're facing, and then if you hit the controls, it bends away, but then when you release it tries to recenter. So you actually have to untoggle it in order to do maneuvers.
Yeah.
And then it just relocks your heading. But then there's the two different kinds, like the advanced SAS and the regular SAS. And the regular SAS is just meant to...
Stabilize?
I haven't quite worked it out, because the normal SAS, it does better at reducing spin than it does at manoeuvring.
Right.
But you can still use it to manoeuvre, because it's gyroscopes or whatever, so it's inertial. Yeah. So obviously the heavier your vessel, the less effect it has.
Yeah.
Because it only has a certain amount of force it can apply.
Right.
And then the advanced SAS is meant to control all the active stuff, so that's like the wings in atmosphere, and if you have an advanced SAS, it also changes how it uses RCS, the thrusters. Because if you don't have an advanced SAS, but you do have the RCS, when you turn the SAS on, regular SAS, that can't control the thrusters. So it won't automatically use the thrusters to control your direction in space. So you need an advanced SAS to actually automatically use the thruster systems.
Because I only chose the two different SAS modules because they're different sizes, and I wanted a bigger one on my bottom bit and a small one at the top.
Well, I think they still haven't changed it. And I was thinking of command modules they've changed recently, so there's now a large robotic command module for the large size.
Oh, okay.
Because they used to only be tiny size robotic, and then they made regular and large in the last update.
Oh, okay.
So now you can put the robotic control anywhere in your ship, which is handy.
Right.
But yeah, they haven't done that with the SASs, because it's like, there's an advanced SAS for large and small, but regular SAS only has small.
Oh, okay. I need to find the small advanced SAS in the menu. Okay, so I will update you on my flights.
So is it one of these things where you only need one of them then?
Well, the thing is about advanced SAS is supposedly there's actually kind of a bug with it, really, that if you have more than one, they kind of fight.
Or if you have more than one advanced.
Yeah, if you have more than one advanced, that can actually screw you up, because they try and fight over which direction to control the ship.
That sort of makes a little bit of sense.
A bit, but
you can understand why that exists.
It's also incredibly inconvenient if you're trying to build, like, multi-part ships.
Oh, I see. Ones that can split apart and still control themselves.
Well, because you really need an advanced ASS for docking, because otherwise it doesn't automatically use the RCS to keep you stable. So basically, when you're doing docking maneuvers, you align yourself so that your docking ports are at least facing on like the same plane or whatever.
Yeah.
Lock it in with the advanced SS, and then that uses the thrusters to keep it in that position, and then you can still use the thrusters to like maneuver it in, like on top of what the SAS is doing.
Yeah.
So you really need the advanced SAS for docking maneuvers, but then of course every part of the ship that you want to maneuver like that has to have an SAS, and then that fucks up when they're all joined together.
Yeah, when they're launching.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Okay.
So I was thinking about designing a new ship that was basically just going to have it so that you could just jettison the excess SASs once you joined them all together in space. So you'd have to commit to the docking, but if you're building like a giant multi-part ship, once you've got all the bits attached, you just get rid of all the extra SASs.
Oh, I see. You could just eject those.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, do you have a standard honed design for getting to orbit now? Because you were saying you're having trouble with that.
Kinda. I have I have sort of two different designs. I mean, I never think they're actually that great. I keep thinking I should redesign them, but the one that I used for the moon base when I was building that, it was basically one design that I used over and over, where I just built it so that it's actually a really weird looking rocket, because the engines go around the payload,
right? Because
it's easier to just mount the payload in line with the center of mass, especially when your payloads aren't entirely symmetrical.
Right.
The closer it is to the center of mass, obviously, the less it has an effect on how unsymmetrical.
Right.
So yeah, I've had that, and that's
so this short rocket with tons of surrounded by liquid engines.
Yeah, well, it's not even that short. It's actually a fucking gigantic ass rocket. The way I do designs for payload rockets is basically make a rocket and then have a placeholder payload. I just use one of those big orange tanks.
Yeah.
Because they're like 36 tons or whatever.
Right.
So it's like, if it can get one of these big orange tanks full of fuel into orbit, then we're good, because I'm pretty sure no other payload I'm going to make is going to be nearly that heavy.
I see. So interesting. Okay. I will update you on progress there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Anyway, so I played that, bit of that, and I finished Bioshock Infinite. Woo. Yes.
So, spoiler free.
Spoiler free.
I actually do want to play this at some point.
I think you should play this, Rob. I think you'd enjoy it. It's a good game. I've gone through why the combat's good and why the gameplay design is good and everything about that. It's not
because there was some mixed opinions on the ending.
The ending
stuff.
Yeah.
Where do you side on it? Does it work for you? Or?
I enjoyed the ending. It was like it was a bit of a massive info dump, basically, combined with. So it was a combination. It was like a Metal Gear ending. It's like spectacular in places. It was multi-stage and with multiple what the fuck moments going on throughout it. It was fairly lengthy, and it was like. You had to think about it afterwards for a while, that you weren't getting what was going on while it didn't manage to explain fast enough while it was happening. Right. So it was like you had to then think, wait, what?
What's going on? What? Sorry? I haven't had time to process this.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of kind of revelations. I mean, the idea is I think you're supposed to put most of the clues together just through the voxophones leading up to the end.
Right.
The audio logs and stuff.
So if you're looking for those things, then presumably by the end you may have an idea about what it means.
But I don't think you really will. I think you need to hear those voxophones in the context of what you learn at the end in order to understand what's really going on.
After you know the revelations,
you then can piece the puzzle together, because there's just not enough info otherwise.
Right.
But so it's kind of like the original Bioshock, actually.
It's a bit like one of those films where there's an end game twist, and actually then you go back and watch the film and you can see the point, like
Kind of.
Sixth Sense style, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about it, it is similar to the original Bioshock, because in that case it had a chronological story, but you came in at the end of the story. The start of the game's at the end of the story, kind of, in Bioshock.
Yeah,
and then
sort
you
of,
kind of
sort
piece
of.
together
What happened? What the history of Rapture.
Exactly, and it's kind of the same deal. But there were some, but it's cool the way they. I mean, one of the coolest things was the name makes sense.
What, Columbia?
No, Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Like, you think, oh, that's just some random cool word they've stuck on. It's like, no,
they do something
that
with
actually
that.
means
okay.
something that actually makes sense by the end of the game.
But not throughout the rest of it.
No. There's no explanation until the end of what Bioshock Infinite means.
Because some games do that where they drop it, like, I don't know, a third, like soon after the start, or like a small portion of the way in.
Act 2, end of Act 2. Or something.
Suddenly something happens and it's like, oh, okay, I get why this game is like this now. Or why it's called this. Or why the subtitle is like this more often than not.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but they didn't. It was like, you have to wait right to the end before it's like, oh, okay, Bioshock Infinite. Okay, that makes sense. And they also went some way to explaining why everything is where despite being clearly a different world to the original Bioshock, everything is mysteriously kind of similar.
Right.
So they actually is a reason for that.
Okay,
too.
cool.
So it's cool stuff. I really enjoyed it. I mean, combat-wise, I thought, or gameplay-wise, I thought the hype was actually that bit that I already talked about earlier on, where you're like, it's a giant area and you're fighting and there's skylines and you go up to a Zeppelin and then take it out from the inside, blowing up. That was like the coolest the combat ever got. There was a big combat section at the end. They avoided the temptation, as has been noted in quite a few reviews. They avoided the temptation for a rubbish end boss fight against Songbird or whatever. Yeah. You never have to fight that thing, which is great.
Huh.
But they did have an extended, obviously needed a dramatic battle at the end.
It needed concluding.
Yeah, it needed something. And it was quite a frustrating section purely because it didn't quite explain to me what was going on fast enough. I didn't really understand what I was supposed to be defending.
Right.
I was on a Zeppelin and they were attacking, and it's like, and it kept, like, it never does this anywhere else in the game, but it had, like, a failure state, and it was one of those fails where you don't even get a sequence, it just fades to black and says, oh, you fucked up. And it's like,
that's the worst.
Freaking hell, I hate that game design.
Yeah, at least some games, when you get that failure state, they'll, like, zoom in on what it was you were supposed to have saved, or what it was. It's like, oh, this guy's died. Oh, I was supposed to be saving him. Oh, thanks for telling me.
No, all you get is a fade to black, a stupid message, and then a reset to a save point right at the start of that entire massive battle.
Jeez,
it's like, oh, not again. Yeah. Anyway, considering the game on normal mode is pretty damn easy, that was kind of annoying to right at the end be like
sudden difficulty spike.
Well, it wasn't even that hard. I just didn't understand what I was supposed to do at first.
That's quite a failure. I think that's frustratingly common.
Yeah.
Even in some of the biggest titles where I don't necessarily want to be told sometimes just outright, oh, you need to be doing this, but there needs to be enough to telegraph what I need to be doing. And
looking back at it, it's like the clues were there. I mean, the thing is, it had a giant bar of blue electricity, and there was a blue thing, generator looking thing on the deck, but I thought they were gonna. I assumed the power source for the Zeppelin would be inside the ship, so I thought they were like
not just on the deck.
on the deck. So I was just ignoring this blue thing. I didn't realize they were attacking it, and I was supposed to be defending it,
right?
Because there were other areas you could go up high and snipe from above.
So you made a slightly overly reasoned judgment.
Yeah, I was like, well, how are they getting into the ship? And it was like, it kept saying, oh, the Vox have destroyed the power core of the Zeppelin. And it's like, we need that thing. It's like, well, how are they getting in? What the fuck's going on? And then I realised they're all shooting this giant blue thing on the deck. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
So basically, Zeppelins are designed badly.
But I thought that bar referred to another. They'd just given you a new area of effect ability, which I won't spoil what it is.
Right. I see.
I thought it was related to that, and I think
like the power for how you can use it.
Yeah. And I think. I saw a bit of, I watched a bit of Vinny playing the end of it, afterwards on their spoiler cast, and that seemed to have a little UI element for that I didn't see, or it was tiny, and maybe I missed it completely because I got totally confused. Anyway, but
they introduced too much at once.
Yeah, kind of. Right. It was right at the end. That's literally the last sequence. It's like a 10-minute fight or something, or maybe less.
A little bit like the end of Bioshock 2, for instance, where they introduce the little sister as a friend.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, and you have to use a new mechanic for the final boss.
Just for the last little segment.
That's basically what they did. But it was a
Which
cool
is fine.
fight.
I quite like that. It's a way of like using what you've already had without making it seem like a cheesy boss fight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in that respect, it was perfect. It just needed to slightly telegraph more what to do or what exactly was going on. Like, because it gave you a message saying, "Oh, you've got this new area of effectability," but it didn't give you a message saying you need to protect this blue thing in the middle of the deck, which is all I needed. Anyway,
that's the most important bit.
Yeah, exactly.
The objective should come before.
Yeah, before the ability that you get or whatever,
or other way round. It should tell you about it. It should do both.
Yeah.
It should do both clearly.
Yeah,
and perhaps with a tiny gap in between.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah. A good game, definitely worth playing. Amazing art design throughout.
Possibility of sequel?
Interesting question. I don't think
relied on the ending, was it?
Yeah. I don't know if Ken Levine would want to.
Multiple endings? Well, I'm not sure he wanted with the first one.
There's
in
no
fairness,
multiple endings.
Might have been.
It actually is. Plays with the idea of choice, I think, in general. It's like it is linear, but it's like it's almost shoving it in your face, the fact that whatever you choose, you have no choice.
Part of its message, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the message. But yeah, cool story.
Well, Extra Credits had an interesting thing about Bioshock Infinite this week.
Yeah.
I didn't get around to watching all of it, but they made the very interesting analysis that some of the world of Columbia doesn't seem quite right because they've had to adhere to some of the trappings of Bioshock,
right?
As in vigors.
Yeah.
As in what's in Bioshock, the plasmids are
cause the downfall of society.
They are so core to that world.
Yeah.
And why that world is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That it makes perfect sense for them to be there, both mechanically and narratively.
Yeah.
In Columbia,
figures
doesn't make any sense for them to exist in the world. Yeah.
And they give you a sort of explanation for
why they exist at all.
For why not for why they exist at all, really. They don't really explain that as far as I'm
concerned. It's like we stole this idea from the actual Bioshock from a portal.
Yeah. Well,
that seems likely, doesn't it? Yeah.
Somewhat similar to that, yeah. But they give a reason for there being similarities between the worlds, basically. But they still don't. It still doesn't help the fact that vigors aren't entrenched in the world of Columbia.
Well, yeah, this is the thing. Like
in the same way as plasmids.
Yeah, the example they gave was like you get these things obviously aren't prohibitively expensive enough because there are sections of the game where you're just freely given them by other characters, and it's like, but then you still see people around you not using them.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Like, I don't know, they had a nice graphic on Extra Credits of like, oh, okay, if I had fire in my hand, why don't I light my cigar with my thumb like a British gas ad? Or
there's images like that in the original Bioshock, aren't there? Of like people lighting.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean?
In
this one, why are people still using Zippos or whatever to try to light their cigarettes if they possibly have fire thumbs?
It's like they've bypassed, because that was heavily involved in Bioshock, but in this one, like at the start of this, there's like a training section which is in Bioshock Infinite, which is like a fairground showing different vigors.
Sure.
But nobody there, like,
is actually using
none of the
them.
public are using them.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Anyway, so yeah, that's
a massive disconnect. I mean, they probably
they're awesome
needed
for the combat.
Right, exactly.
They're really well done.
But perhaps they needed
they're probably better than they ever were.
Yeah, perhaps they needed to like separate them out as something for that world to work. Make them something sort of special, as in they are hard to come by for some reason, or there's.
Elizabeth never even comments on the fact that your arm occasionally turns on fire, or like turns into like
there must be, that makes the assumption that they're a known element, into the world.
I guess it's just a bit weird.
It is odd
because none of the enemies use them against you, and they're apparently around all the time. Well, I suppose they do. Some of the enemies are like the embodiment of one of the vigors, but they don't.
Yeah, because in Bioshock they played with the idea that some enemies were using those things against you, and then soon after you saw that, you'd have the option to get it yourself.
Yeah, that kind of happened. I mean, like the crow guy kind of can turn into crows and fly,
like the invisible
and the fireman
stuff, wasn't there in the first Bioshock?
Yeah,
like some guys, some of the. What are they called?
Splicers.
Splicers, that's it, yeah. They would just go Splices.
Voices.
You go invisible for a while, and they were super annoying. And then, of course, you get the ability to, when you stand still for a while.
Yeah.
It wasn't a plasmid, was it? That was one of the tonics, which is one of the more useful ones. It's like, well, if you stand still for a while or don't shoot, or there's some mechanic to it, you just turn invisible, and it's like that's incredibly handy.
Yeah.
I can scope out this area like without being seen.
It's weird. You get so powerful on normal anyway. Like the vigors are so once you upgrade them, they're just insanely powerful. But then there's one enemy that's really hardcore, which is the handyman, and
he's the big daddy
yeah,
equivalent.
basically. But you don't get many. You don't see him that often. But when you do, he comes right up and punches your lights out. You basically need the skylines to escape him, effectively. But he can electrocute the skylines. There weren't enough sections where you saw him do that, but it was kind of cool. And when he did, yeah, that was kind of fun.
Forcing you to jump off sharpish.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I tended to. My basic tactic was murder of crows against infantry. Which, once you upgrade it, when they die, they turn into traps of murder of crows. So then any more infantry that come, they all just get
sort themselves
murderized. Yeah, and then against anything else, like anything electronic or any bosses, I just zap them with the electricity. Which, after a while, starts chaining to other things once you upgrade it. First, so that they were my go-to figures. But I thinking about it, I wish I'd tried the undertow. That's like the one you get quite later. Is like a wave, and it's like pulls people in and sucks them out. Like its image is like an octopus. So that one sounded quite useful because you could like pull people off floating barges.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that could be useful.
off the world. So that kind of stuff is kind of cool.
Force push.
Yeah. So playthrough. It'll take you no time, I'm sure, compared to me. And we can discuss the spoilerific ending if you sometime.
Yeah, as I say, I will get to it. It is on my to-do list.
Yeah, it's still massively up its own arse. But,
well, don't expect anything less.
But that's cool. It's a cool game.
Sometimes you need someone with a strong conviction.
Yeah, he really does. That guy, Mr. Levine. Cool. Okay.
We clear?
Yeah, I think we're clear.
That's the end of part one.
Part one end. Do you want to pull it out?
Are we stopping? I thought you were going to go
Well, I don't know.
Some E3
I don't know whether this will actually be a part, but we're going to have a recording break.
Okay.
You may or may not hear anything apart from a cut, and then we'll come back.
I have to think of some sort of sound effect to slide in.
Yes, exactly.
Some sort of musical sting. But I have to use my sinister organs.
Yeah, possibly.
Rob
Rob has sinister organs.
I spleen. Alrighty, catch you guys in a few moments.
Catch you back for E3.
Cute.